Greetings and welcome back to the channel. If for the first time you're coming across my channel, please remember to subscribe. So I came across this thing a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to get the full picture and both sides of the story before I actually bring it to you. So the chief of the Maroon peoples of Jamaica and the Chief Currie had formally refused assistance, but not the full assistant. What the assistant that was offered is that the government will bring the army to assist. And what the chief was saying is he would accept the assistant, but not the army. So I wanted to bring you his full speech, and then I want to also follow up on the misunderstanding to get him, the chief, and his ambassador to break it down a bit more. But before I go there, in case you don't know, well, everybody should know, but in case you don't know who is the Maroons are a sect or people, set of people in Jamaica who had a treaty with the royal at the time to come to some agreement where they could have a level of autonomy. I will try to do a second episode on this myself, so to bring certain things to you. But because I don't want this one to be too long, it's already long, but I want it to be too long. So what I will do is bring you the chief speech, which is also on his Instagram, and also the explanation by the chief and his ambassador. So let's carry on.
So that the restoration can begin.
Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Holness, on behalf of indigenous people of Accompong and the wider Maroon districts of Cockpit country, I send sincere appreciation for your recent visit to our community and for the government of Jamaica's expression of support following the destruction caused by Hurricane Melissa. Your presence, accompanied by the several ministers of government, marked the first official visit of your administration to Accompong since my election in 2021, and it was warmly welcomed by our people. We remain grateful for the humanitarian gesture extended to the Accompong people and for your willingness to mobilize resources, particularly those of the JDF military, to assist with the recovery efforts. We also acknowledge your reference on international partners, including Ethiopia, Ghana, and Rwanda, who have expressed readiness to assist in the island's rebuilding efforts. Honorable Prime Minister, following a deep, comprehensive internal review and a formal deliberation, the full Maroon Council has this time decided not to accept the offer on the militarization of the space during the recovery effort. The full Maroon Council instead has resolved to continue with the response, utilizing civilian resources from our joining communities and our partners, both locally and internationally, who have offered to the community their assistance in the recovery efforts. Instead, the Council would like to thank you for the offer on materials and would accept the offer on those materials and equipment necessary to assist in those recovery efforts. We want to ensure, Mr. Prime Minister, that harmony and inclusiveness of our Maroon human resources, of those here in Accompong and adjoining communities, are balanced to execute the infrastructural relief efforts across our Maroon communities. This methodology aligns with our laws and cultural way of life. This decision is based also on the following considerations. 1. The established reconstruction partnerships and resources Accompong has secured through international donations, through technical sponsorships, and volunteer engineering assistance sufficient to address the rebuilding and development needs arising from the hurricane. These partnerships, coordinated through the Accompong Development Foundation, reflect years of relationship building, and they provide to us a structured, culturally, and aligned framework for reconstruction across the Maroon territory. The second consideration was the protection of community well-being and trauma sensitivities. As you would have recognized, our community was significantly devastated, and many of our elders, some of the women as well as children, have endured profound emotional trauma. In the aftermath, the introduction of military personnel carrying assault rifles, as we would have seen just the other day, even in a humanitarian capacity, could exacerbate and distress and cause additional distress among residents of the community. The Council believes that reconstruction conducted through civilian and community-based teams is the most appropriate path for maintaining emotional security and cultural stability at this time. This, I'm sure, you can understand, Mr. Prime Minister. The third consideration would be the treaty obligations and governance responsibilities Accompong as a treaty-recognized indigenous polity under the 1738 Treaty bears the responsibility of in ensuring that the recovery of...
Okay, let me just stop here for a moment. And in the next episode, we will try to focus also on the 1738 Treaty. What is it and what does it said? So let me just carry on playing, but look out for the next episode, and that's why I wanted to subscribe to the channel so that when I bring you the next episode or when I upload a new video, you will get notified. Let's continue to listen to what he's saying.
Within the territorial space are consistent with its laws, governance institutions, and cultural protocols. The Council has therefore determined that internal and partner-supported reconstruction efforts remain the most suitable avenue for the recovery from the damages that were sustained. This decision is not a rejection of cooperation, nor does it diminish the appreciation of the humanitarian intent behind your offer. We again thank you. But rather, it reflects Accompong's capacity to manage its internal recovery efforts through established civilian channels and international collaborative efforts that have been ongoing since the impact of this storm. I again reiterate our commitment to engage in dialogue on areas where meaningful cooperation between the government of Jamaica and the Accompong Maroons can be maintained. We thank everyone for their continued support, particularly in matters related to the disaster readiness and recovery from the effects of Hurricane Melissa. The Maroons continue to show their resilience and share their support with the broader communities impacted by the storm. We respectfully emphasize that this disaster relief cannot be interpreted as altering or diminishing Accompong's treaty-recognized autonomy. The historical and legal foundations of the...
If you listen good to what he's saying, I believe they thought about this very carefully, because accepting the government proposal, it's a very good proposal, but you also don't want to compromise in terms of autonomy. You see, the Maroon peoples are what you would call sovereign people. We'll go into that in the next episode. But as I said, because I don't want this to be too long, let me just listen to him and we will do another episode and break down certain things.
1938 treaty remain intact and continue to guide our interactions with the Jamaica State Government. Honorable Prime Minister, we again express our sincere gratitude for your visit and your expression of solidarity during this difficult time. We remain committed to peaceful engagement, transparent dialogue, and long-term well-being of all communities within the Cockpit country. May this period of national recovery represent an opportunity for renewed mutual respect and for collaborative efforts that honor both Jamaica's constitutional framework and Accompong's treaty-based autonomy. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make it clear, there was no denial of...
No. I want to go into the part where the chief, because after he made that statement, there was a misunderstanding. So the chief and his ambassador is going to break it down in a certain way so that you can see the full picture. Let's hear from the chief and his ambassador.
What we explicitly stated was a concern over the military being used as a resource to execute those recovery efforts. Considering many other circumstances, particularly one maintaining certain harmony within the space. You know, there has been tension, there is past, there are things that are to be resolved. On top of that, there's still trauma from the storm. There are a lot of people still having concerns. And additionally, we do have the skillmen, we do have partnerships with persons locally and persons who in the diaspora have committed to offer their assistance. And from that end, we know from a resource standpoint, we will be able to cover the repairs. So it has been taken out of context and means it is being positioned as a rejection, where it is totally not a rejection. We actually had a good conversation. We sat down and we spoke of the different things that needed to be done. And I did raise a concern that, you know, this is something we have to go through with the council in terms of the military and the concerns that we do have having the military in the space doing that work.
Okay.
Yeah. So regarding the specificity of the military, it's not that Accompong has a specific problem with the JDF, meaning the Jamaica Defense Force, in terms of a personal problem, or for that matter, was there any tension with the Jamaica Defense Force? That's not the issue. The issue is stemming from just looking at the antecedents, how we have come to this point. And within the last 5 years, unfortunately, it is obvious to everyone that the Accompong Maroons has been asking for constructive dialogue, right? To be able to have a seat at the table where we can flesh out certain concerns regarding the constitution, constitutional reform that was presented at the time through the ministry that was changed now, and, you know, speaking of a republic. These are very much concerning topics to the Accompong Maroons. Why? Because in 1962, because there was not a proper effort to try and sort out or flesh out what was going to happen with the Maroons with this new constitution in 1962, and we have that evidence. We have archived evidence from both governments, from the Jamaica archives and both the British archives, of what was happening just before, of months before, in the House of Commons regarding the Maroons and the new constitution that was going to be put together, which is the Ordering Council of 1962. Now, we're at a point again.
Let me pause there again. You see, what he's stating here is, we know that the Prime Minister or the government of Jamaica are not the government of Jamaica. The government of Jamaica have to report to the King or Queen of England. I like to say Queen because I still do not acknowledge this King. That's just my opinion. So because the Prime Minister or the government of Jamaica is appearing to be in control, the Maroons community or the Maroons are trying to show you that do not get sucked in to the game, because it's a game that's playing. This entity that is outside of Jamaica is who is control Jamaica, and they're using the government to, what you call it, further control the wider island, because they do not control the Maroon areas in terms of taxes and land, and they're using the Jamaican government to try and gain leverage. What most what you call it, colonizer will do, and it happened all across the world. You will see they use the people who look like you to put you into bondage from slavery days. So let's continue.
We're discussing removing of the king. The Accompong Maroons legitimately have a legal document that testifies and recognizes the legitimacy of the claims to land and the legitimacy to the claims of having a people and a government and a defined territory. Now, these are elements that allow the Accompong Maroons to be recognized on an international scale, even under the atmosphere of autonomy. And because we have the autonomy and we've been governing ourselves for a very long time now, the treaty is almost 288 years old. Come January, after we cross over into the new year on March 1st, and we are now going to say that for the 63 years of the governance of the Jamaica, the Maroons have had a relationship that has not been fully concrete or fleshed out. There's just this gray area in the law. Chief Currie's administration has come over the last 4.5, going 5 years, trying to press, this issue of the claim and the claims to lands. Why we always hear about bauxite mining in Cockpit country, the effects that it's having to people. But most people, it doesn't really bother them. In terms of if you live in Kingston or you live in other parishes, it's not really your concern day to day as much as it is the Maroons who have to wake up to it every morning in those territories. No, because of these things, we have to look at, here we are now, right before the election of Chief Richard Currie come February, the Accompong Maroon election, which happens every 5 years. And right after Hurricane Melissa, after we've had 4 weeks of constant hurricane relief from the Accompong disaster response team under the leadership of Chief Richard Currie, we have been doing logistically magic, and that's the only way I can say it, because we've really put together, the great minds, hard workers, and we've been able to unify certain resources with international aid, and we've been able to get to our people. I think the last count I had was almost 24 different communities that Accompong itself has gotten. Now imagine Accompong got hit with almost the eye wall, pretty much devastation across all of the Maroon territories, and yet Accompong has been able to go out and still share to 24 communities relief aid, not just once, but some areas got done twice. Now it shows that Accompong is able to manage its own internal affairs and logistics, because we have had a system of working with people over a number of years. Now, when the government of Jamaica finally decides to come just at the 11th hour, on whether unfortunate or unfortunate, whichever way it wants to look at that, whoever on whichever side of the fence, the matter is that they came, they were well received, but I believe it was very premature that a statement or a declaration of the JDF being offered, and it was more of like an assertion than an offer. When you start to listen to the statements that were made. And then, Chief Richard Currie would have reached out, in the back channels to ensure that his voice or the office of the chief would have been placed on the record in terms of, thank you, but no thanks to this specific part, which is the militarization. I would say, Ratigan, that we sent off that on, I think it was December the 3rd. And then sometime later in the evening, we saw an official post from the JDF Instagram page. And when you read the caption of it, it says that the JDF was mandated to come to Accompong town. Now, you are a man of the law. You understand these words and these terms, and it's a military. So when the military is saying that they're mandated to go somewhere, And, Chief Richard Currie nor anybody in the council had a definitive conversation with the Prime Minister concluding or accepting that when we were in person. Now, to kind of see these political maneuvers happening around us, it was only right that, with the autonomy of the full Maroon Council and the office of the chief, that there was some form of stance to kind of balance the equation here. So that is why Accompong would say that we accepted the offer for humanitarian aid because we were accepting it from everyone, internationally. We want humanitarian aid to reach to our people, but in essentially boots on the ground, carrying assault rifles. That is a different topic, Ratigan, and I believe that needs to be looked at in the interest of the elders, the women, the children, not just overall just a random act of, let's say, rejection.
Chief Currie?
Yes, greetings again, Ratigan, and audience. I think the ambassador covered it well, and I think, again, I reiterate that all we have done is reposition the execution of the aid, and what we would prefer, and I believe it's reasonable, to have an input in what happens going forward, as we have been planning and coordinating with others from the private sector, from the diaspora, and locally on the ground. It's difficult to essentially override all that's been done. We look for more collaboration in executing the work that needs to be done. And I say it and say it again, all these communities need help, and that's the mission, to give the help.
All right, well said to both of you. You stated your point. Let me ask you this. The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management is currently led by a military person. The permanent secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister is a military person. Now, we know that military people, they're not trained to have discussions. They're trained to follow orders. And so when you said mandated, it makes sense to me that there was a mandate. There's no discussion. I mean, somebody said, put this up, it's up. Do this, and it's done.
It is to show you that we have no issue or confrontation with the Jamaica Defense Force, or for that matter, some ulterior motive why we want to reject them. It's just a matter of a concern that without the mutual dialogue in terms of the dignity for both parties on the side to be able to have a conversation, it is very unfair to be able to just come into the space, after such a long time and start to, dictate how the relationship is going to go. But the water machine is up and running. We did have that small hiccup, Ratigan, but that Ratigan, whether it is known, we don't even know who would have made phone calls, or as you're kind of maybe alluding to, who is trying to slow the progress, right? But as things come in, yes, we do find that sometimes we do have problems or a pushback, or as we would say, resistance. But Maroons find a way to resolve it.
How much damage was done to your area, and how much rebuilding has taken? How much rebuilding efforts have been put into getting you back up to where you were, and maybe beyond?
All right. So let me, before I even go into that, Ratigan, just touch back a little bit on what you just mentioned in terms of dialogue. I think where we left Sunday was a good space, right? I think it was a good place where we opened dialogue, sat down like two big men and had a conversation. And I think it was the beginning of the building of trust. And I would believe that still exists and that door remains open. And I do not think anything has happened, this is my personal opinion, to change that, right? So I will continue and progress in the affirmative, that Accompong, in collaboration with the government of Jamaica, will work through efforts to bring assistance to those who need it. I am working in the affirmative, meaning the positive. It is going to happen, and it's going to happen in collaborative, right? So let's start by addressing the damage, right? Majority of homes in Accompong were damaged. And when I say damage, I mean approximately 80% of the homes suffered a significant amount of damage. The others that sustained were all slab roof homes, right, and more recent constructions. Majority of the homes in Accompong were decades ago. So the style and the material, the grade, all of those things would have weathered over time, as well as not in today's world be considered, of the right code, construction code, so to speak. So what you find is that even though there are homes that stood up and had their roofs torn off, some of them have structural damage, either cracked walls, shifting foundation, that sort of thing. So simply putting back a roof on top is not is not going to be the response or the answer, because you're pretty much building on matchsticks at that point. And what we've been looking at is how best do we utilize the funds that we have raised so far to address as many as we can address with the concerns that are deemed urgent. So we look at the elders, we look at the single parents, and we look at the indigent, those with disabilities and so on, right? We try to target those households. The intention in the first phase, Ratigan, is to cover approximately 50 homes, right, to be either reconstructed or renovated, right? None of this will be done overnight, right? As you can see, all those areas that are affected, many of them are still in a state of disrepair because, one, there's a challenge in getting materials. Two, the price in which you're getting the material fluctuates. Everywhere we go, it's a different price, right? Three, ensuring that we have the right strategy to deploy these materials, and what we aim to do is the key thing. Because here's a commitment that I've made and I've spoken to my council about. In the next year, we endeavor to ensure every home in Accompong will have one hurricane-proof room, right? That will act as your bunker or your shelter should we ever face another storm like Melissa. Because what we found was a significant vulnerability that we faced due to the storm, and that a lot of that has stemmed from the method of construction and the practices that have been put to play in times gone by. We now have to act with a bit more intelligence and also act precisely, because we don't have a second chance at this. We're not sure we'll be as lucky this time around to be able to be in the situation that we're at, to call on our diaspora, to call on our Maroon families, to be able to contribute to our rebuilding in this way. So we have to be able to ensure that what we do with prudence, we do with effectiveness, and we do it with preciseness. So that's what the work has been. What you're looking at there is the rebuild of some of the low-income housing that were demolished in Accompong. And this has been working through with Icon Tech Construction, a local construction entity who has offered their engineering services for free and architectural services for free to aid in the reconstruction and the development of our community. So we presented this to the community. They all liked it. The aesthetics have been enhanced, and we're going back with more sturdy materials. We're looking at the roofing. What suggestion do you have for the roof? What suggestion do we have for the roofing is the question. Many people are using zinc aluminum roofing. We want to set the roofing in such a way that there's no way for the wind to get under it and lift it off ever again. So all this will be rolled out in the next couple of days, Ratigan, because in the background we've been putting together a plan to ensure that at the end of this, no home will be left in the open.
Pim, it's almost 5 weeks, or what, 4.5 weeks since the hurricane. What assistance have you received from Pim, if any?
All right, forgive me, but if I'm wrong or incorrect, I would need that correction to be made public. But I have not been officially contacted by an official from Pim. We've been acting on best practices and what we know, having gone through storms before. And I think to the best of our abilities, the community really came together in the storm. I must commend the men of the community and some of the women as well, who during the storm, 180 plus mile per hour wind, were running through the streets amidst shearing winds and debris to go into houses to rescue elders. And I must say, without them, the story could have been quite different. They were able to also assist in getting the roads clear. So big salute to all the men who put in the muscle work, and the women who risked and braved it to go out and make a difference to the community.
Here's a question that I don't know if you want to answer this, but you did mention that there is a February election coming up, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, the elections are constitutionally due in February, and before that, there is an enumeration period, and from that enumeration, there is a period for the allowance of finalization of voters lists, etc. So there's obviously a hindrance in that process with the effect of the storm, and the Constitution permits for the extension of that period up to 3 months after the day in which it is due, constitutionally due, where there are extenuating circumstances. So the council is reviewing that process and seeing how best we can align ourselves to meet constitutionally the election that is due. So we are working through our communities and our representatives within the council
as well as the Board of Elders. The enumeration period was set for November, was set to begin in November, and that would have been interrupted by the onset of Hurricane Melissa. So the elections will be had, but obviously in the state of our communities right now and what is happening on the ground, the more urgent requirements, of course, supersedes the election, which does not take away from its importance, but we aim to have it within the time that it is set to be had constitutionally.
Yeah. Who is eligible to vote in the election? Can I vote?
So Maroons by blood, Maroons by residency, meaning living within the period for a specific timeline and for over a specific period of time, and whether by marriage, naturalized Maroons are also eligible to vote. So there's a process, and that is also explained within the Constitution.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I was told that my grandmother was a Maroon. I can't verify it because she passed on. I think she passed on before I was born, but my mother used to tell me that. So if I said, well, you know what, I'm claiming my heritage through my grandmother, how would that be verified?
All right, so we normally start by utilizing the elders, the Board of Elders, and their knowledge, right? In each community, we have elders and persons within the community. You know, some people in the community, they know everybody, right? And they know who they live next door for the last 40, 50 years type of thing. We have been able to utilize that method in tracking some of our lost families, right? And reconnecting them with their bloodline. So it starts by identifying where was your great-grandmother living, where did they emanate from, what parish, what community. If you have that information, we can get to the bones of finding out what happened to your family and where your origins stem from. That essentially forms one of the bases for recognition and acknowledgement of your Maroon identity.
Let me sort this out. Anyone here can answer this. The Maroon celebration in January is known worldwide. It's a global thing. Everybody knows about it. Given Melissa and the aftermath, are there plans to hold it? Because I think it's in January. Are there plans to go forward with it, or is it subject to postponement like the election?
Okay, no. So January 6th must go on, right?
Must happen, Ratigan. Can't
stop. High water.
Can't stop.
Go on. It cannot happen, right? That will never happen. Right? The thing is this, Ratigan. It is not only a celebration, it is a sacred pilgrimage, right? To a very sacred space, to commemorate a very special and unique moment in time, right, where freedom as Black people never existed, right? The leaders of liberation stood up and reminded the world what Black empowerment and Black liberation looked. That's what that was, and that's what it continues to be. So for us, it's not a if or but or maybe. It must happen, right? Yeah. And as the elder them, we say ancestor them be to the rest are here if we don't do it. Right, so we have to make sure. The plan is Latigan, as you said. Let me just indulge a bit. Yes, we've been heavily impacted by the hurricane, and everybody's looking to find out, what's going to happen, what's the situation. January 6th is obviously the opportunity for Maroons to earn a little income, earn something in their pocket, whether it's by renting stars or doing your own selling or participating, whatever it is, some form of commerce or engagement or tourism. This year will be a little different for the sake that what we're doing now is moving into the recovery phase of fixing our community. There's a lot of junk and debris still in Accompong. There's no lighting. There's no electricity. We believe the focus this year should be around communal building. If you love the culture, if you love this heritage and what it stands for, we're asking for you to be a part of this rebuilding process. So for the 5th and the 6th of January, we'll be engaging in that rebuilding process. With the 5th being a major work day. And what we'll be doing, we'll be announcing very shortly, Ratigan, is a process by which persons can contribute and be a part of that. Because here's what the truth is. What we've raised so far will not be sufficient to complete the works that are necessary. So we want on the 6th of January, we have materials that we can pull on from hardware stores that we'll be partnering with. So that instead of paying an entrance fee to come at the January 6th festival, that money we're asking them to leave at a registry at one of the participating hardware stores, which will then be putting down on materials and dropping across different districts, as well as Accompong, to commence a work day from the 5th of January. We want to do a big bonfire and drum circle on the night to kind of bring some unity towards the mission and the vision. On the 6th, we want to do our usual Kinder March, Old Town procession, the usual cultural indulgence for the day. There will be food, there will be craft, but we're limiting the vending. Why? Because we're cleaning up the community. We're limiting the vending to the Maroon community, those emanating from the Maroon districts. Those are the persons who we're facilitating. Those are the persons who need the help. So we're not looking to have this huge, convergence of external vendors and persons, coming to take from the community. We're asking you to come and give to Accompong this year. Make a difference to help us build stronger and build more resilient. So bring your tools, come with your gloves, come with your tent, come with your hammock. We're gonna pitch a night tent village, and we're gonna have a bonfire. Right? We're gonna talk, we're gonna vibe, and we're gonna create an energy that is unique, that is harmonious with the times that we're in and what is required of the people. We now need to come together. And I think it's not about profiteering, it's not about doing that. So for me, for the council, and for the rest of Maroons, we are calling on the support for those who want to be a part of the celebration this year. Come and make it a tailgating event. Bring your igloo, bring your knife, bring your machete, bring your tools, and let's put in some work and try to help back some of the people who really need the help.
Yes, like somebody said, awesome idea. And if you would, we'll be in touch with your folks to get the. I like the idea of saying send the money to this place so that they can, we can get supplies from the hardware store, whatever. If we I'm sure producer Joan is going to reach out to your folks and get that, so we can put it up on our platform and tell people that here's a way that you can community. Because I tell you, Anu and Chief Currie, there's a great resistance in the diaspora, at least in our corner of the diaspora, to giving anything to the government to give to people. People have said, no, we will find a community. In fact, there's a plan to even adopt communities, adopt families, but they said, we're not giving anything to the government. We want to give directly to the community. And I think it's a brilliant idea for people to actually give to the community. And then they don't have to supervise it, because a lot of the containers and things, some of these people travel with it because they say, we want to make sure, because we can't trust certain people down here. So here they wouldn't have to supervise it. They can just send it and, and be safe in the knowledge that it is going where it is supposed to go. Let me switch and just ask Ambassador. I know this question, and of course, but it is a question I want to ask. Chief Currie spoke eloquently about the January 5th event, and he talked about unity.
Yes.
Now, the door is open, as you said. I know discourse with the government to come to terms about the relationship. There have been some controversy regarding the Accompong Maroons and other Maroons. Can you tell us about any outreach for unity with those groups?
At current, I don't think there are any tensions between Accompong and any of the other Maroons.
Good to hear.
What existed of past had been resolved. And what we've been doing is finding momentum and commonality in vision and goals to move forward. Recently, I had a meeting with the leaders of the other communities and spoke to them of Accompong partnering with them with certain farming initiatives, as well as health and educational initiatives. That was right before the hurricane. So again, there are no tensions at the moment between Accompong and any of the other Maroon communities. If it does, it's beyond my knowledge.
Okay. I think will think we. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. No, but I concur. Obviously, Chief has made it very clear already. We have no issues with any other Maroon community. We've always pushed unity from day one. I even go back to the highlight of Chief Richard Currie's administration being the first administration, especially out of the Leeward Maroons, to have invited Windward Maroon into our government, which was Alex Moore Minot. He was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time. So that went well, and he saw that he had many other duties to do in the Windward territory as well. So we are very connected to our Maroon communities. We ensured they have called us during this time to ensure that we were okay, and we've reached out and brought aid to the other Leeward communities as well.
Okay, outstanding.
There are many propaganda stories out there, right? Hopefully this interview helps to try and curb some of it. I know this is much more of an intellectual platform, but there are people out there that can be shaped and shifted by any form of narrative once it has to do with some political flavor, right? But I'll just leave this out there for the universe. We are not separatists. The Accompong Maroons are not separatists. We are not terrorists. We're not trying to overthrow the government of Jamaica. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to build our own people. We're trying to rebuild the dignity of our people and build up our community. It has to be understood that the defense of our right is an inalienable right in itself. That inalienable right cannot be overshadowed by some form of politics per se. That especially when there is no communication or discourse, right? There cannot be any stress, duress, and coercion to forcefully amalgamate people that are saying that we are first in time. No, that's a maxim of law. First in time is first in line, and based on it being that there is equity involved, and even if someone's saying there's equal equity at this time, it must be understood that the Maroons are the First Nation Jamaicans. Therefore, we cannot separate from ourselves. We are Jamaicans at the end of the day, but we're just saying that we have a right here first. Now, the problem with that, Ratigan, is that our people have a disposition within our nature that them say bad mind, right, and grudgeful, that we cannot look upon people who look like us and say, wow, okay, you are indigenous and you have some special rights to land that maybe I don't have. And you know what the truth is, Ratigan, as you said earlier, we're all Maroons, right, in our nature. So therefore, you have people who can claim that right, but they rather not. They rather find some barrier of resistance to have a confrontation. But right now, I just want to take that time on behalf of, Chief Richard Currie, the Accompong Maroons, and the indigenous people of Cockpit country to ensure that the world understands, the international community and the diaspora understands, and the rest of the fellow Jamaican citizens understand, and my Maroon brothers and sisters understand. We are not purposely looking for some fight with the government of Jamaica. We are not in some kind of military resistance or militia resistance. That is a falsehood. There is a propaganda going out there that is trying to create a turmoil between us and the government as we go forward. And I just look forward to a day where a lot of this propaganda ceases, when people can look towards peace and unity.
Accompong has faced in the past is the ability to help others understand how they can invest and partner with Accompong. Why? Because of the gray area that exists again within legislature, right? We understand that our lands aren't taxed, our lands aren't under the registrar of titles, all these things. So investors, inherently would want to know, how do I secure my investment? How do these things work? So we've been having to do a lot of work in the background, creating that platform and date for persons to understand how you can come and partner and work with us. So we created several vehicles to provide avenues for persons to invest with us. What we have in surplus is land. We have a lot of land. A lot of arable, usable land. We have springs that we can access, tap into to provide irrigation. What we need are persons with the vision and the intention and the equity to come in and partner with us. So we've created a special zone for commerce and trade within the space, with the focus being on ecotourism, agriculture, and of course the heritage tourism, right? A lot of what we've been doing is based on that. So tourism has many aspects to it and layers to it. One particular is wellness tourism. Every region you go in the world has some version of its indigenous medicine tied into its culture and its offerings. We in the Caribbean have not pioneered that for what we know and call bush medicine, granny medicine. So we launched out an initiative called Indigenous Caribbean Medicine Initiative, which Accompong would help spearhead alongside Dr. Ben Israel and other stakeholders to create a vision of wellness tourism, right, where at the epicenter is using the indigenous knowledge mixed with a little bit of what has been learned and taught in years gone by to provide an environment for regeneration, for rejuvenation, for clarity, for health. And then we have the natural tourism, the trails, the caves, the hikes, the bird watching, the heritage sites, Maroon heritage sites. What we look at as agriculture, right? We have always been known to grow good spice ingredients, pepper, ginger, turmeric, pimento, right? We were engaged in a project with JA Spice, which recently got cancelled, right? But that program was seeking to push Jamaica Spice 50% in terms of output over a 4-year period. We were well on our way to recognize a contribution to Jamaica Spice because Accompong and the Maroons have and own the legacy of jerk. jerk was created by, and what we learned from them was a means of preserving the meat by seasoning it, right, wrapping it and burying it and keeping it for a while. You take it out and you put it over a fire and you roast it, and that became jerk, right? There's an equity that we have within the jerk segment. So from spices to sauces, seasonings, those are things we can pioneer, not only as a community but as a household, because every house have their own little formula and their own little recipe. So there's so many things that we want to tap into, which is why we created the Accompong Technology and Entrepreneurial Center, which is now our emergency shelter and distribution center. That is the thought process, Ratigan, and that's where we're headed as a community.
All right.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for watching. I will not add to that, but subscribe for the next one, because we will address this topic in the next episode. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.